You and I have been on a quest to find the right questions, or not even right questions, just questions in general from our listeners, from our audience, and we got one that is super good. It's a really, really good question coming in from Zohar Golan from Morgan Hill, California. Question is, hey guys, I really enjoy listening to your show with all the great tips you provide. Hey, appreciate you, right back at you, man. I think that's cool. I'm listening to find my first single family. I'm trying to find my first single family rental, and I was looking at markets outside of California. I'm looking at Roofstock and Home Union, and also looking independently in the Atlanta, Georgia area. The problem is I cannot find anything that will give me cash flow of greater than $1,500 to $2,500 a year. Is that what I should expect, or am I doing something wrong?
Well, that's a good question. We really need to get people to engage with us live, because I have questions to ask the questioner to try to get better color around this.
Absolutely.
But here's the first thing I would say. Roofstock, Home Union, Own America is another site out there that are giving people unprecedented tools to analyze properties and to watch the interplay between things like how much down payment do I put down, i.e. how much debt do I take. All these factors on where you buy, the cheaper the house you buy and the higher the rent, the more of a return you get. But he's got this boiled down to hard dollars. He wants to make more than $1,500 to $2,500 a year, and he can't find anything that will do that. Well, here's what I can tell you. What that tells me is that he's not putting enough money down. Okay, because let me just make sure that we kind of run down these numbers. It's very, very important for investors not to rely on rules of thumb. Okay, like the 1% rule, forget about the 1% rule, forget about the flat dollars you want to earn. That can be your goal, but how you actually arrive at that, there's an interplay of numbers. So for example, the term that is used in professional investing in real estate that pertains to you making a profit. So you collect $1,000 a month in rent, you pay your taxes, you pay your insurance, you set 10% aside for a maintenance reserve account to make sure you've got cash to fix things that go wrong. You pay a property manager 7 or 8%, and what you have left over out of that $1,000 is going to wind up being about $600. Okay, you're going to spend about 40% of the money. Now, I'm not giving you a rule of thumb. I'm just telling you that's what it plays out to be. That $600, when you multiply it by 12, gives you your annual cash flow or net operating income. And that, compared to what you paid for the property, is what winds up being your yield. So if you pay $100,000 for a property and you get $6,000 a year in profit out of that, you've got a 6% yielding investment. So that's equivalent to putting money into a savings account and getting 6%, which, by the way, you can't do, but I'm using a really simplistic example. If you pay $100,000 and you get $6,000, you got 6% on your money. The house didn't even have to appreciate yet. You got 6%. And that allows a person to compare real estate investment A to real estate investment B, and to mutual fund C, and to bond D. Okay?
That's right.
So that it's really, really important to get down to that kind of understanding, because now you can start to look at it and say, well, okay, if I paid the $100,000 and got my 6%, I'm also going to get appreciation. Now, depending on where I buy, the national average over the last 20 years, houses have appreciated at 3.4% per year on average for 20 years nationwide. So if we just apply that, now on our website, we show you what it is in every county, and you can do better and worse in different places, but using that, we'll call it 3% to make it round. That means your $100,000 property is now worth $103,000 a year later, and then 3% more on top of that a year later, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, going forward. It's going to obviously fluctuate. But the combination of the yield, the profit you make on the rent, and your appreciation, that combination is actually what your return is. So if you're getting $6,000 in yield and $3,000 in appreciation, you made $9,000 on that property that year, and you put $100,000 into it, you made 9%. Now it's starting to reflect why people invest in real estate. They don't always know how these numbers interplay, but they know the impact that it has on their financial life. Mm-hmm. And you can't find 9% easily out there in a low-risk investment. And rental property is a low-risk investment if you know the market that you're in. You buy a decent house in a decent place.
And so, especially if you have the right operating partners with you, such as property management. Here's another question for you, Greg. In terms of inflation, right? Is that a downward pressure, say now instead of that 8-9% year over year? I think this year inflation's roughly sitting at 1.8 to 2.2 in February 2018. Would that 9 take it down to a 7, 6-ish, 6.5-ish, or do you not look?
You know
at
what?
that?
I don't look at it that way, and I'll tell you why. The economists will tell you that's the right way to look at things, but this is a real world common sense asset class. I'm talking to people like, when was the last time you made a decision on anything financial and then thought to yourself, well, how is this going to play out inflation-wise? Right? You just don't, right? You live your life. You buy the car you think you want or need. You pay for the school for your kids that you think they should go to. And you don't sit there and look at these things in terms of their impact on, or the impact on those decisions by inflation.
Right.
Here's what I know about inflation in real estate. Real estate values inflate. Okay? When inflation goes up,
That's right.
real estate values tend to be driven by that also. One of the things that gets more expensive in higher inflation economies is the real estate. So it winds up being a hedge. It usually tracks at better than inflation. Okay, it has historically, which means that if you're invested in real estate and the value of a dollar is going down, the more dollars you actually have parked in American real estate, the better, because that dollar is becoming more valuable as the price of everything goes up. So does the value of your portfolio. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And I think my response to the question also is, it looks like this person's having trouble finding cash flow greater than the $1,500 to $2,500 a year. I mean, okay, so here's the deal with that, right? Cash flow, I'm assuming your net positive income, that's what you're talking about, $2,500 a year. Let's just use $2,400 a year as a easy number. So $2,400 a year, say divided by 12 months, that's $200 a month. If you apply,
he's not putting enough down. He's not putting enough down. That's the reason for that number.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
very easy to find. It's very easy. I just gave you an example of a $100,000 house that's going to make you $6,000 a month a year in profit, plus whatever appreciation you enjoy. Okay, which I think will be 3% depending on where.
That's right.
So he's got a big mortgage payment on this. So my advice to our friend would be, hold off for a year, save more money, put more money down, then you're going to get the cash flow that you need, and base your decisions on the reality of putting a larger down payment down so you can get more of that cash flow.
Right. I mean, and it also depends on which area you're investing as well. I agree about the half down. Makes sense to me. You're looking at a $200 profit margin on a monthly, assuming your expense load on this is 60%, right? Or even
Correct.
if it's 70% and you're only profiting 30%, which means that the $200 a month represents 30% of the profit on this property, that means that you should be able to find something to rent for $670 a month. Okay, I don't think that's super difficult to do, especially if you're looking in some of the cities that we've been talking about on the power play that Greg and I have been dissecting. So between putting down half of the acquisition all-in price and sticking to the right cities, a nice little tidbit like Greg and I always talk about is the Blue City Red State. Right? Hence Montgomery, Alabama. Great. I love Chattanooga, Tennessee for the same reason. And Greg and I can talk about that all day. 30 seconds on this. Is there a database for rental prices? And is it hard to find the rental information for the houses I'm looking at? I mean, Greg, I think this is a great plug for you.
Well, we have that information on Own America, but you know what? I'm going to be non-self-serving and tell them to go check out Zillow's estimate. Zillow's rentals estimate, really quickly, the reason why rental data is so hard to get is that when you record the sale of a property, you have to record the deed and the price it's sold for. When you sign a lease, you don't record that lease. The information is not pervasive. Zillow's got such a large base that we've compared actual rents to Zillow's rentals estimate, and of all the things we've seen, they've been the most accurate.
Hey, I'm with you. I like how you kind of put it off to Zillow a little bit. I appreciate that. Look at that. Look at you being independent.
Their number's better than mine is, so I have to be honest.
There you go.